Yeah, so I thought to talk a little bit about emptiness, because we're doing the new module 4. This is going to be on emptiness, on the third principal aspect of the path. And there's one point that was clarified in my mind a couple of years ago that I was surprised when I heard it. It hadn't been clearer to me before. And it is because sometimes the Geshis teach it the way I was understanding it. And this point also came to mind this summer when we were studying with Jangse Choje Rinpoche, because one of my Dharma brothers, who is a really very good scholar, had the same idea that I used to have too, you know? And so I think it's something that I may have explained in that fourth module, that there's a slight adjustment that needs to be made. And some of you may have this too. So in the 4-point analysis, the first point is identifying the object of negation, okay? And then the second point is seeing that if things existed the way they appear to us, as truly existent the way they appear to us, then things would have to be either one and the same with their basis of designation, or completely different and unrelated to their basis of designation. And then in the third point you see if they're one, in the fourth point you see if they're different. Now, the way it is often taught, and this is the way I thought it was supposed to be, is that you are searching for the inherently existent self to see if you can find it either in the body or in the mind. That's the way it's often explained. Actually, the way J. Rinpoche teaches it is that you're not searching for the inherently existent self. You are examining how does the self exist. Okay, so how does the self exist? And if it were inherently existent, then it would have to be either inherently one and the same with the aggregates, or inherently different and unrelated from the aggregates. So you see there's a little subtle difference here. You're not searching for the inherently existent self. You're examining how the self exists, and if it were inherently existent, it would have to be either inherently one or inherently different. And then you examine, if it were inherently one, then what kind of problems come? Okay, there's a lot of problems that come, because if the self and the aggregates were inherently one, then they should be the same in number. So you have one self, you should have one aggregate, or if you have 5 aggregates, you should have 5 selves. And then if they were inherently one, actually having a self would be totally redundant, because the self is already one of the aggregates, so you wouldn't even need the word I or anything like that. So there's all kinds of problems. Those are just a few of them. There's many other problems that arise, like you couldn't experience the karma that you created earlier, and so on and so forth. Okay, and then similarly, if they were inherently separate, then also you couldn't experience the karma that you created, and before. And then also, the body and mind could be in one place, and the self could be in another place. So when you're doing points 3 and 4, you're not looking for the inherently existent self. You are examining how the self exists. If it were inherently existent, it would have to be either inherently one and the same, or it would have to be inherently different. That's what you're examining. Okay? So it's a little bit different emphasis than looking for the inherently existent self. Okay? Because you're just examining this feeling of I, the conventional I, how does it exist? And if it were inherently existent, then what would be the ramifications? And those ramifications are absurd, so therefore it can't inherently exist. Okay? Yes?
So that seems also that it changes the reason that we have point one about identifying the object to be negated so carefully before.
No.
Because, well, I mean, what then is,
Why do you
looking for that thing that we've identified that we can't find? What's
Yeah.
the point? Or how does that
why do you identify the object of negation? Because at the beginning you are looking at how things appear to you and how you hold the self to exist. And if you look at it, Jeffrey was talking about this, or somebody was recently, that if you look at it as, oh, this is the object of negation, then you're already lessening the impact. Whereas if you get the feeling of, oh, this is how the I appears to me to exist, this is how I feel I exist, and you have such a strong feeling that this must exist. There's absolutely no question about it. Like, if this didn't exist, then what does exist? And you have to have that kind of surety in your feeling that I inherently exist for the reasoning to make an impact, to show you that it's impossible to exist the way you feel you do. So that's why you identify the object to be negated first. And that's why you don't say to yourself beforehand, oh, this is the object to be negated, so of course I'm not going to be able to find it. Because then you're already, it's making it less strong. Whereas if you feel like, oh, I'm sure that this exists, this is me, And okay, if I inherently existed, then these would be the repercussions. Mm-hmm.
So when we're afflicted by something and have attachment or whatever, then when we identify that as the strong me, that's that the force of feeling so strong. Here I am.
Yeah.
That's what then using the logic
rams into and pokes holes into, exactly. So that's why you call up that feeling that's so strong. And then, if the I actually existed inherently as it appears, then it should be either inherently one or inherently separate. Then you show it isn't, and then, oh, well, it can't exist the way it appears, the way I think it does. Oh my God,
And so that's why they say it's so important to identify what to refute.
Right.
So clearly, so
Right.
strongly.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, because we're really challenging our own conception of ourself. So we have to have what that conception is apprehending very clear in our mind, And of course, its apprehended object is erroneous. But we don't start out saying, oh, it's all erroneous, so I already know it doesn't exist, so now I'm going to prove it doesn't exist, because that's not going to have any impact. It's like, oh, wait, this is me. This is how I feel. When, somebody says my name, or when I just feel me, there's this feeling inside of like, concrete, not physical concrete, but mental concrete. And that's what you're examining, okay? I also saw this summer through talking with some people that you have to understand the analogies that the teachers use properly, and you have to understand the adjectives that they use properly. So for example, when I say, like, the inherently existent I appears like a concrete I, some people might misunderstand and think, oh, the I appears like something that is form, concrete like form, so that there's some form inside. That's not the meaning of concrete. Or if we say a solid I, they might think of, again, something made of form. Yeah, and that's not the meaning. Those are words that we use for physical things, but here we're talking about, another way of looking at something. Yeah, not that it appears solid or concrete like form, but really and truly there. Yeah. So there's many things like that. So you have to really listen carefully and make sure you understand. And this is the value of the discussion, to make sure we understand properly what's being said. You had?
I was wondering if you could speak about how to meditate on the second point, because it's something I take on faith, I'll
Okay.
bring it and move on.
Okay, so the second point, that if the self existed inherently as it appears, it would have to be either one with the aggregates or different from the aggregates. There's no third choice. Okay? So there it's, if something it exists independent from other factors, there's only, you've got to be, you should be able to identify it. And there's only two places you can identify it. It's either going to be one and the same with the aggregates, or it's going to be something totally different from the aggregates. You're not going to be able to say that something inherently existent also dependently arises, like we were talking about this morning. It's inherently existent, but it also needs to be produced. No, if it's inherently existent, it's got to either be inherently one or inherently separate. Okay. And it can't be both, because something that's inherently existent is independent, so it's something that's got to be discrete and, findable like that. Okay? So you just see that there's no third possibility. Like, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Yeah, it can be dependent arising and also need to be produced by causes and conditions. No, none of that makes sense.
It could be a dependent arising.
Oh no, it can be, it could be independent, but also need to be produced. Yeah. Okay. So just to clarify that point, for the people who are doing the module 4, and for everybody else too, who maybe should think about doing module 4. Okay.